recording. Okay, so because I'm using this private account here, the LUMS account is causing some problems. So therefore, this might be the reason that there are few students who are not able to connect. Anyway, so in order to overcome this problem, I'm recording this specific session, and hopefully by the next session, things will improve. So I'll try to figure out the problem that is there with the official LUMS Zoom channel. Okay, so keeping this in mind, what I'll do is that I'll keep today's session a brief session. I'll just go over some of the course outline stuff, and then maybe some of the basics, and then probably from the next session we'll be starting the contents that would be used or that would really be part of this particular course. So the first session or the first two sessions would be revising some of the things that you have already seen in CS100. Okay. So I'll straight away go to the outline for the course, and I'll focus on the grading scheme and the contents. I hope you can see the screen here. Okay. So so primarily what we want here is that you should, as you move along, you'll basically be equipped with some advanced concepts that are used in C++, especially especially the object-oriented part of C, C++, right? So here, just a minute. Okay. So here is the outline for the course, and primarily the standard instruments that we have here: quizzes, labs, assignments, midterm, and final. So quizzes would be here. It's like 8 to 10 quizzes, but I mean, that's the maximum sort of a limit, but we'll see that even if 6 to 7 quizzes are there, we'll have this drop policy to actually reduce it to a reasonable number, but this is like the maximum number that we have so far. So 2 quizzes will be dropped. This number could increase depending upon kitne quiz hum lete hain, but the total weightage would be around 15%. Labs, there would be in total 14 sessions, and the number the number of labs that we'll have, there'll be 14, and some of those labs um would be guided labs, or they would be practice labs. The division, though I've given a number here, which is 2 to 4 labs will be conducted as a guided lab. In fact, the number of guided labs would be more compared to what we have written here. So we'll try to uh, increase these guided labs and the evaluated labs. Um well, all the labs would be evaluated, but the guided labs or the practice labs may have lower weightage, right? So we'll announce that beforehand. So all those labs which would have higher weightage, we'll announce that beforehand, ताकि आप उसकी तैयारी कर सकें. इसमें से भी हम कुछ ड्रॉप करेंगे, स्पेशली जो प्रैक्टिस लैब्स होंगी उसमें से भी हम करेंगे. प्रैक्टिस लैब्स वुड आल्सो बी graded, but their weightage would be low. So जो भी उसकी weightage होगी, we'll announce that weightage beforehand. Then there will be assignments, and there will be like enough time will be given to you to complete those assignments. Maximum, well, we are thinking of having 4 assignments in the course, 5% of each. So they'll all be graded, nothing would be dropped. Midterm and final exams, there will be 20% and 20% respectively. We may divide the midterm into 2, midterm 1 and midterm 2. And that's how this might the grading might change accordingly. Then we have obviously the final exam, and that would be around 20%, and that would consist of some small programming assignments and MCQs, and maybe 1 or 2, and maybe some say some programming exercises that could be of say a smaller sort of, in terms of time consumption. They might be those which would be short sort of programming assignments, and then relatively long programming assignments, programming questions. So this is how the course will be divided. And right, so rest, I think you should go over the other details that are there. I'll upload this updated say outline on LMS, and you can actually have the access to this the updated outline. Okay, so there is a question here whether we'll be having a project and an assignment. In fact, even if there is a project, that would primarily be considered as an assignment in the grading part. So even there is a project, that the total duration of that project would be no more than a standard assignment. ठीक है, तो primarily आप उसको assignments ही करें. And अच्छा, एक ये है कि do we have 1 project or 4 assignments? It would be 4 assignments, right? Or project could be the 4th assignment. Like it is actually a 4th assignment, लेकिन it might be a sort of start to end sort of an assignment, जिसमें कुछ concepts को आप further देख सकेंगे. I mean, you will be able to apply that. But I mean, project as such is not there. You should consider that also as an assignment. So there would be, I'll be reiterating this again. This would be 4 assignments totally that we are thinking of having. अच्छा, कोर्स कंटेंट्स के point of view से we'll have like the first 2 sessions, as I told you, they'll basically be revision, and then we'll have the introduction to uh, uh, classes and objects, overloaded operators, recursion, linked lists. Obviously, pointers, you have already studied that, but we'll also see that how pointers are used in the context of classes and objects. Linked lists, queues and stacks, priority queues. So these are some of, say, the initial sort of data structures, or some basic data structures that would be introduced to you. And later we'll introduce the concept of inheritance, polymorphism, time permitting, exception handling, templates इनको भी discuss कर सकते हैं, and basic design patterns को भी discuss कर सकते हैं. This is all will be discussed if the time actually permits. Okay, so this is the outline in short. If there are any questions, you may ask the questions, or you may write down in the comment box, ताकि उसको I can answer that. So if there is anything that you would like to ask. Okay, so how will be the lab conducted? So that's the question from Saad. Labs will be conducted like this would be a timed sort of mini sort of an assignment given to you within the time slot that has been allocated for labs, and I think that's on Monday from 9 to 11:50. Hopefully, you will be able to complete the assignment. It would be designed such that you will be able to complete it in 2 hours, but you will be given 2 hours and 50 minutes to complete that, and it would be timed on LMS, as is the case with some of the other instruments, right? So it would be considered conducted during the the session that we have. TAs will be available, and you will have the access to ask obviously questions related to the okay. So the question regarding IDs, I mean, when the first handout comes out for the lab, you will be able to know that what type of environment we'll actually be using, and that would be identical, and that would be stated very clearly there. और उसकी अगर कोई introduction वगैरह होगी तो we'll definitely have our first session on that. So need not to worry about that. Okay, then Dania have asked a question which says that our practice lab exercise is available in the textbook, or there is an additional reference source. We'll provide you the lab manuals, right? Or lab manuals जो हैं वो will be there, and they may be from the textbook, or they may be from other reference sources, but they'll be very well explained in the lab manuals जो भी हम उसमें बात करेंगे. ठीक है, रिगार्डिंग कि कोडिंग एनवायरनमेंट के बारे में क्वेश्चंस हैं. आई हैव ऑलरेडी टोल्ड यू दैट दिस वुड बी मेड क्लियर, वेरी क्लियर in our first session that we'll be having on in the lab. ठीक है, तो उसकी प्रैक्टिस के लिए and hopefully this would be out well before the lab session ताकि आप उसको कर सकें. Anyway, the first session would be the basic session that we'll be following. और उसी में जो है वो you will be given enough practice regarding the regarding whatever environment we will be using, right? Okay, so regarding the TAs, there will be a group of TAs that will be available. Roshan will be there, Aisha, Naeem is there, Muzammil will be there, Fahad Akhtar and Dilkasha. Basically, I'll send you a list, and then you will be allocated a, a TA to you. A group of students will be allocated to a student to a TA, and primarily all your issues and problems will be taken care by your respective TA. Okay, assignments will be individual. There are no group assignments here. So you'll have to complete those assignments individually. Yes, TAs will be available while you are doing the labs, at least for the first 2 hours. Most all of the TAs will be available. And then, as I told you, if we'll design the labs in a way कि आप 2 घंटे में उन्हें complete कर सकें. But if there is an overflow, you can always ask the TAs will be available to you. ठीक है, तो आप अपने जो ग्रुप टी है उसको भी आप डिस्कस जो है उससे भी डिस्कस कर सकते हैं. दे विल बी अवेलेबल ड्यूरिंग दैट टाइम फ्रेम, जो भी टाइम फ्रेम हम करेंगे. Unfortunately today there was an issue with the Zoom link, and I have to use my private link, and therefore there are some time restrictions also, and there is a restriction on the number of participants as well. Therefore I'm recording this session, and obviously I'll be recording all the other sessions, and they'll be available through the YouTube channel. So I'll just send an email regarding this also. So those of you who have when get the chance to join in this session, they'll basically be asked to go through that recorded session. Inshallah. Acha, then there is a question. Myra have asked this: will the quizzes be announced or unannounced? Most of the quizzes will be announced. Okay, you might get a surprise regarding unannounced quizzes, but mostly they'll be announced. Okay, and we'll again let you know beforehand and the course contents. लेकिन उसमें unannounced भी शायद कुछ हो जाए, लेकिन mostly they'll be announced, right? Right. G, are there any other questions? You can use, I mean, unmute your mic as well, and if you can also ask any question if you want. जी ताहा. अच्छा, during would be connected by Zoom too. Okay. Yes, you will have a slot allocated for this, as I told you, Naima, and you'll be connected through Zoom, and you can ask the questions, whatever questions, either to your group TA or through that link that we have. So the Zoom link will be available. Okay. Okay. So I've actually Taha, I've actually given the permission to unmute yourself, so I think you should be able to unmute it. अगर वो
यस सर, अब अनम्यूट मैं कर पा रहा हूँ माइक। मेरा सवाल था कि एक्चुअली ये दोनों सेक्शंस हैं, उनकी ग्रेडिंग कलेक्टिवली होगी या इंडिविजुअली होगी?
नहीं, सेक्शन 1 उनकी उसकी ग्रेडिंग अलग है, सेक्शन 2 की ग्रेडिंग अलग है. So they are not like I mean, we'll try to sync them together based on the contents that we will try to cover the contents as we move along. लेकिन it's not necessary कि I mean, it's not there. I mean, the grading will be separate.
अच्छा, और ये जो इसके एग्जाम्स होंगे वो भी इंडिविजुअली होंगे?
हर सेक्शन के, दोनों सेक्शंस के अलग अलग एग्जाम्स हैं.
ओके, ग्रेट, थैंक यू सर.
Okay, Abdullah, your question is that isn't it better that, yes, of course, as I told you that just to keep an element of surprise, I'm adding this कि unannounced quizzes शायद कोई हों, लेकिन obviously the number would be low. Announced quizzes ही होंगे ज़्यादा, and this is primarily because of the reason that you have mentioned in your comment कि internet connectivity के issues हैं और दूसरे मसाइल हैं. That's why we'll actually we have actually kept this option. ठीक है? So I don't want to eliminate that element of surprise from here. ठीक है? So that's why I have said this. अच्छा जी, so there was probably Hamza Rafi raised his hand. I think you should be able to unmute Hamza if you.
सर, मेरा ये सवाल था कि हमने आईडी कौन सा यूज करना है, कोड ब्लॉक्स यूज करना है या फिर कोई दूसरा?
वो मैं अभी आपको जो है ना, probably by tomorrow you'll get the handout. Tomorrow or by Saturday you'll get your first handout regarding the labs, and we'll share all the details in that. ठीक है? So just keep we'll let you know. ठीक है?
Thank you, sir.
Anything else? You're welcome. Okay, I know okay, CS100 के अंदर you have studied the basics, and just to revise some of the stuff, we'll be going over some of the basic stuff in the first two sort of sessions, and because of this connectivity issue today, I'll not go into the details. We'll really start this session. The real session will be started when we'll be talking about the classes and the objects, probably in the next week. अभी हम जो पहले एक दो sessions हैं वो हम revision के ऊपर रखेंगे. I think a better way would be कि I'll just record those sessions in an asynchronous way में. I'll upload those sessions, or we'll ask you to go through those sessions. I have like slides also. I've uploaded the slides, and they're the standard slides that are used, that comes with the textbook also, with some modifications. उसके अलावा I have some handwritten notes also. I'll just make sure कि उसकी scanned copies आपको मिल जाएं, and that would be a quick reference for you also. So both of these, and of course अगर उसमें कोई issues आते हैं, कोई problems आती हैं, the TS will be there to help you out, and I'll be there to help you out. You are free to ask any question, and you can email me at any time, and also dedicate some office hours जिसमें आप you can come in and you can ask questions, and obviously the same thing will be done by the TS also. Right. So the office hours will be announced as soon as they'll be finalized. We are just finalizing one or two more TS so that आपके लिए आसानी हो. On average 10 से 15 students जो हैं, they'll be allocated to each TA. Or if there are any issues, any problems, you can always discuss them in separate to the standard sort of discussion that we'll be having. The TAs will have separate office hours और उसमें they'll be entertaining those students. इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि बाकी students उसमें participate नहीं कर सकेंगे. You will be all the other students can participate in the individual sessions, and I'll request the TAs कि वो अपने जो individual sessions रखें वो सबसे share करें. लेकिन उसमें primarily those sessions would be for their groups. लेकिन if you have some specific issues, some problems, you can always discuss that before the session with that respective TA and ask the permission to actually join in that. और उसके अलावा journal office hours भी होंगे, group ऑफिस आवर्स भी हम उनको रखेंगे जिसमें स्पेसिफिक ग्रुप को फोकस करेंगे, और जर्नल ऑफिस आवर्स भी होंगे जिसमें जर्नल क्वेरीज जो है वो हैंडल करेंगे ऑफ एनी स्टूडेंट, राइट. अच्छा जी, इब्राहिम मौजम इज आस्किंग कि विल ऑल द लेक्चर्स बी रिकॉर्डेड एंड अपलोडेड व्हेन अ क्लास एंड्स. यस, इंशाल्लाह I'll make sure कि ऐसे ही हो, कि they'll be recorded and they'll be uploaded. ठीक है. प्राइमरली सिंक्रोनस मोड में हम मूव करेंगे, एसिंक्रोनस मोड में कम ही होगा. So except for the initial part जिसमें I'll very quickly go over the basics, लेकिन mostly these will basically be recorded and uploaded, hopefully after every class that ends, and I'll do that with today's session also, especially for those students who were not able to join in today because of this issue. Gee, so is there anything else? I'll always be welcoming suggestions from your side. If you have some suggestions of any sort, you can always send me an email, and you'll always find me and my team here, TAs, always be receptive of your ideas, and we'll try to improve to your sort of satisfaction and the way that we'll be conducting this particular course. Okay, so just a few things about the first sort of things that you should revise before you actually come to the lab session. There'll be the data types that you have studied. As you all know that there are mainly two data types that C++ actually uses. Primitive हैं और उसमें user defined हैं. Primitive में those which come with the language itself, and you can't really do anything about that. You can actually use those data structures, primitive data types when you are programming. For example, you can define integers, you can define double, float, character, bool, and they have their respective memory allocations there. If you want to declare an integer, you use an integer, but then there is another category which is called the user defined or user defined data types, and these user defined data types would include structures, classes, unions, and enums. And the focus of this particular course is on classes, and we'll be discussing the features and that classes add and the programming flexibility that classes add to C++, and that's where C++ actually differs from the other standard programming language, especially the predecessor of C++, which is C. सो इसमें जो ऑब्जेक्ट डिफाइन करने हैं, ऑब्जेक्ट हैंडलिंग आपने कैसे करनी है, ये ऑब्जेक्ट्स में इनहेरिटेंस कैसे आएगी, ऑब्जेक्ट्स के क्या प्रॉपर्टीज हैं जो इसमें हम यूज करेंगे, दे विल ऑल बी डिस्कस्ड. सो द प्राइम फोकस वुड बी क्लासेस. सो द टेक होम from this course would be that if towards the end of this course you are able to do problem solving using classes and the object definitions that we'll be discussing, then I think you should be satisfied with that. I'm especially focusing on problem solving. The reason is that ultimately the goal of any programming exercise is to solve a particular problem. Syntax is one thing. Syntax के बारे में it's something that is that's not a problem these days. I think syntax आप एक simple Google करते हैं तो you will find out the syntax. ठीक है, सिंटेक्स को अक्सर लोग जो हैं वो याद भी नहीं रखते. नॉर्मली they forget that, but recalling that is not an issue. The real thing that you should take from any course, I would say any course, is the problem solving ability. You should try to get a hold of this problem solving ability. जैसे आपने अगर कोई कंडीशन अप्लाई करनी है अपने प्रोग्राम के अंदर, सो यू शुड बी वेरी क्लियर कि वो कंडीशन क्या अप्लाई होनी है और कहाँ पे अप्लाई होनी है. अगर आपने अपने प्रोग्राम के अंदर एक लूप को इंट्रोड्यूस करना है, सो हाउ दैट लूप विल बी इंट्रोड्यूस्ड, what would be the condition that would be required to introduce a loop in your programming solving effort, and then where to apply that loop. और फिर लूप्स की वेरियस टाइप्स हैं. यू ऑल नो कि फॉर लूप्स हैं आपके पास, वाइल लूप्स हैं, डू वाइल हैं. So all these are different types of loops where you can perform a particular or execute a particular set of code lines repeatedly. तो you should be very clear कि कहाँ पे आपने लूप लगाना है और उस लूप की ज़रूरत क्यों है आपको, और उसमें कंडीशन क्या अप्लाई करनी है. विद इन द लूप बॉडी जो है आपके पास, विद इन दैट ब्लॉक ऑफ दैट लूप, what are the statements that are actually required. The real problem that students should try to get their hands on is the problem solving thing. अगर वो ये कर लेते हैं, अगर आपको एक प्रॉब्लम दी जाए और आप उसे सॉल्व करने में कामयाब हो जाते हैं, that would be really great, right? So for that you should consider practicing a lot. ठीक है, so if you leave practicing, or if you will not be practicing, in that case what will happen is you will forget. And especially syntax तो आप recall कर लेंगे किसी ना किसी तरीके से. You can open a book, you can Google it out and find out कि if structure if statement आपने कैसे implement करनी है, या while loop आपने कैसे implement करना है, for loop के कितने parts होते हैं, और उसके starting statement क्या है, ending statement क्या है, blocks क्या हैं. What you will not find in these textbooks and in this reference material is a solution to your specific problem. अच्छा, अगर वो solution to that specific problem is available and that's standardized, तो फिर आपको उसको भी याद रखने की जरूरत है. That's where these design patterns and all this stuff comes in. तो बहुत सारी चीज़ें ऐसी हैं जो कि आपने बार बार करनी है और हर एक ने करनी है. For example, if you want to design say a login for a specific say program or website, तो वो एक standard procedure है, and that has been standardized over the years. ठीक है, so even in that case you don't really need to actually know, क्योंकि वो एक आपने you'll just have to recall that, find it out and apply it. हाँ, प्रॉब्लम वहाँ पे आती है when your problem is unique and when the solution of that problem is not available anywhere. ठीक है, तो वो आपने खुद ही इंडिजिनसली उस प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करना, वहाँ पे योर प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग एबिलिटी कम्स इन एंड चिप्स इन. ठीक है, और अच्छे प्रोग्रामर्स वो नहीं होते जिनको सिंटेक्स बड़े अच्छे तरीके से आ रहा हो. अच्छे प्रोग्रामर्स वो होते हैं जिनकी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग एबिलिटी बहुत अच्छी हो, एंड द डिमांड इन द मार्केट इज फॉर दोज. ठीक है, who think innovatively and who think how to come over this particular problem. And especially there are two other things that you would need to keep in mind while you are doing the problem solving. It should basically be efficient way of solving the problem, because computing time and the computational time is a bottleneck. Okay, you want to solve a problem quickly. Agar, let's say if it takes a very long time to actually upload a page, and primarily because well, there are other issues also, but let's assume that the other issues are not there, and it might come down to the way you have actually programmed, the time it takes to execute the program. Okay, and that's where this efficiency and performance part actually comes in. Okay, so one is the time related issues with programming, कि आपका program कितने time में execute होता है, and the second one is related with the accuracy, के जो problem solving आप कर रहे हैं कितनी accurately आप उस problem को solve कर रहे हैं. राइट, सो यहाँ पे जो प्रोग्रामर्स हैं, जो अच्छे प्रोग्रामर्स हैं, दे फोकस ऑन these aspects and syntax comes along with them. वो बार बार जब यूज़ करते हैं, they get used to syntax. तो syntax आना जो है वो आप बगैर प्रैक्टिस के और बार बार करने से वो आप syntax को अंडरस्टैंड नहीं कर सकें. ठीक, लेकिन प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग एक ऐसी चीज़ है जो which comes which you have to like you can't really find it out there even on Google. आपको pointers मिलेंगे, लेकिन ultimately you have to come up with this problem solving in your context. तो इसलिए आपको exact solution शायद कभी भी ना मिल सके. ठीक है, so this should be very clear in your mind and you should keep this in mind. The real motive of this particular course, and for that purpose any course, especially in programming and also in other domains also, is to inculcate this ability of problem solving in the students, right? So I've told you कि बहुत सारी चीज़ें आपने already की हुई हैं. I'll not go over those very in detail. I'll just browse them very quickly. For example, how to add, how to store a value in a computer. You all know you'll have to define a variable in order to store a value, or uske liye there is a specific way of doing that. There is a memory allocation for that particular value, and the variable is primarily a sort of a name that you have given to that memory allocation that is present in the in your program, right? And that's why you can actually change it. That's why you can change the contents of that memory location by changing the value there. और आप उसकी मेमोरी लोकेशन को याद रखने के लिए फॉर योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग आप उसको एक कोई नेम असाइन करते हैं. दैट नेम इज प्राइमरली अ वेरिएबल. देन यू I'm sure you are aware के वेरिएबल की डिक्लेरेशन आपने C++ में कैसे करनी है. Obviously you start with that what type of so how the memory would be allocated. क्या वो इंटीजर के तौर पे आपने स्टोर करना है या डबल के तौर पे स्टोर करना है, डेसिमल पॉइंट्स उसमें हैं या नहीं है. तो डिपेंडिंग है, या वो टेक्स्ट है, टेक्सचुअल वैल्यू है या नहीं है जो कि आपने स्टोर करनी है. तो उसकी बेस के ऊपर आपने हाउ द मेमोरी शुड बी एलोकेटेड, उसके लिए टाइप है. Then the name, you have to define the name so that you can actually use it in your program, and that actually differentiates between different types of variables or between different types of data and values that you have in your program, and then the value itself. So it actually comes in the same sequence, and I hope you still remember that. Anyway, वो जो asynchronous mode में मैं आपको कुछ handouts दूंगा, and I've already uploaded the slides. आप उन slides को भी go through कर लें, and that would be quite useful. Then variable visualization, variable declaration and initialization. These are two things that you'll have to do. Declaration, as I told you, कि आपने type define करनी है, name define करना है, और जो वैल्यू आपने देनी है उस वैल्यू को आपने असाइन करना है उस वेरिएबल, राइट? So there are two parts of this. First is the declaration part जिसमें आपने बताना है कि मेमोरी कैसे allocate करनी है, और दूसरा is the initialization कि इस वेरिएबल के अगेंस्ट वैल्यू आपने क्या स्टोर करनी है, राइट? और अगर आपने 8 बाइट्स 8 बाइट्स यूज करनी है, या 4 बाइट्स बिफोर द डेसिमल एंड 4 वैल्यूज बिफोर द डेसिमल, 4 वैल्यूज आफ्टर द डेसिमल, आप उसके लिए डबल टाइप यूज करेंगे. अगर आपने इंटीजर डिफाइन करना है तो इंट आप यूज करेंगे. सिमिलरली आपने करना. So then how to change the values? Again, changing the value of a variable would depend upon of course on yes, some assignment statements जिसमें आप assignment symbol use करते हैं, where you change, where you can actually do the initialization or change the value later on in your program. Here you can define constants, you can reserve some words for you so that you can't really, so that anyone in the right using that particular program or writing that program that shouldn't, you may not be able to change or use those words for any other purpose. Variable manipulation is done through some of the operators that you have, जिसमें multiplication है, plus है, minus है, division है. There are other operators also, और उनकी अपनी preference है. You already know about operator professor preference, precedence जो है, BODMAS rule जो है, left to right rule जो है, you already know about this stuff. And if you don't remember, then kindly go through the slides, go through the first few chapters of the textbook that I have also uploaded on LMS, and then I'll also be uploading some of these handwritten notes also, ताकि आप उसको भी use कर सकें. Data types के बारे में I've already described earlier. Abstract data types, आपके पास user defined data types हैं, उसको abstract data types भी आप कह सकते हैं. And then there are built-in data types जैसे integer, double, boolean, float. These are all primitive or built-in. और फिर abstract या user defined are those data types which you create yourself as programmers depending upon your need, right? तो ADT आप उसे कह सकते हैं abstract data types. For example, cout और scene आप use करते हैं. Cout and scene primarily is something that is being used in a program quite often. ठीक है जी. ये सी आउट सीन जो है वो कैसे डिफरेंट है, वेदर इट्स अ प्रिमिटिव डेटा टाइप या एब्स्ट्रैक्ट की उसको कैटेगरी में आप लेके आएंगे, किस तरीके से उसको डिफाइन करेंगे. आई मीन आई लीव दिस क्वेश्चन फॉर यू टू ask yourself and try to come up with some problem. इसको I mean it's what I can say is that this is a sort of an abstraction that we have done here. CNC out के case में there is an implementation phase of this and there is a user phase of this. User phase में the way you are using it, for example आप उसके लिए एक special operator use करते हैं and you know what type of yes Aisha, you are right, abstract data type. The implementation phase of the CNC out and similarly others is hidden from you. So the complexities are hidden. You only use these, and you are not required to program these. You can only use these different types of data types that we have. तो आपके पास सिर्फ यूजर फेस आता है, ठीक है. प्रिमिटिव डेटा टाइप्स के अंदर भी ऐसी है. प्रिमिटिव आपके पास यूजर फेस आता है, यू ओनली यूज देम, you are not required to implement them. और उसके जो hidden part है, you don't actually require that to do that. What happens in case of user defined is that you have to actually come up with Zoha, I'll basically be sharing what I'm doing is that I'm not using any specific slides at present. Um, these are just things that I'm just repeating from some of the hand written stuff, which I'll share that with you. Okay? So I'll do sharing while I'll be actually using some stuff जो कि share करना है. So these are just some things that I'm just trying to revise. Right? Okay, Isha, your question regarding scene see out objects of a class so this is something that will be discussed when we will be discussing classes, so I don't want to like confuse the students who's actually are not aware of these some of these advanced concepts. But when we come to this discussion, and at that time we'll basically be discussing these types of questions, inshallah. Okay, so just hold on to your questions for a while. Okay, so what else is there? I mean, you already know there are other things that you must have encountered earlier during this CS100 course, जिसमें different types of characters हैं जो कि आप use करते हैं. For example, escape character आप use कर लेते हैं. फिर there are certain backslash operate है जो आप use करते हैं. Quote के लिए you use some specific sort of characters, a combination of different characters. टैब के लिए भी आप यूज़ करते हैं. अगर आपने न्यू लाइन करना है तो उसके लिए भी आप यूज़ करते हैं. देयर आर डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ जैसे characters or a combination of different characters that you use. I hope you remember or that stuff. If not, reiterate that. Just go over some of the stuff that I've uploaded. Operators हैं, उनकी short form भी है, उनकी long form भी है. For example, if you add a value to a given variable, let's say a is a variable, you want to add a value x to that, to a value of 1 to that, you have to increment that variable by 1. So let's say x plus 1, and then you want to store it back to the variable x again. So you can say that x, and then you have this symbol, assignment symbol, followed by x plus 1, and that means that x will be incremented by 1 and then will be added back to उस memory location में जहाँ पे पहले x मौजूद था. There is a short version of that which is also available, and we'll discuss that also while we'll be doing the lab sessions. जिसके shorter versions को भी हम use कर सकें. What else? अच्छा, control of the program जो है, that is actually done through various types of checks that you can perform, or वो based on that, based on those checks that you have, the program could take a different path. And of course, if you execute statement 1, then statement 2, and then there is an option that you can go to statement 3, or you can directly go to statement 4. And if statement 4 is executed, then statement 3 will not be executed, or if statement 3 execute होती है, तो statement 4 will not be executed. लेकिन statement 1 and statement 2 are executed. So in that case, you have to add some sort of a check in your program, some sort of a control in your program, and that control is done through any ideas. You can write down in the chat box, or you can answer. You can unmute yourself and answer this question, that how would you implement this type of a control. Yes, through conditional statements, and generally these conditional statements, there are different types, but here the most common is the if-else statement. अच्छा, एक इसमें कहा है कि yes, go to statement is also an option. That is also a sort of a statement that you can use, but it's really dangerous, I would say, to use go to statements. Generally, people and programmers avoid using go to, and only very sort of professional and those programmers who are very good at programming use these types of statements. क्योंकि इसमें go to, especially go to की मैं बात कर रहा हूँ. if else statements हैं, फिर there are other statements also, for example switch blocks आप use कर सकते हैं. There are other conditional statements that you can actually use जो कि आपकी program की direction को जो है वो set करते हैं. That's like one thing. तो दो एस्पेक्ट्स हैं कंट्रोल स्टेटमेंट के. दो चीज़ें ये कंट्रोल स्टेटमेंट करती है. एक तो कंट्रोल स्टेटमेंट्स या कंडीशनल स्टेटमेंट्स ये करते हैं कि ये ब्रांच, दे एक्चुअली ब्रांच योर प्रोग्राम. ठीक है, दैट मीन्स कि आप इसमें से यू कैन जनरेट मल्टीपल ब्रांचेस. ठीक है, तो इट्स द एग्जांपल इज दैट इन अ रोड नेटवर्क इफ देयर इज अ कॉमन पॉइंट और वहाँ से 4 डिफरेंट रोड्स निकल रही हैं. So these are all 4 different directions. So there are all these 4 different branches that emerge out of a single connection. तो एक तो ये कंट्रोल एस्पेक्ट ऑफ द प्रोग्राम जो है दैट एक्चुअली इज एक्चुअली प्रोवाइड्स यू अल्टरनेटिव्स. ठीक है, ये हम ब्रांच आउट कर देते हैं. ठीक है, और दूसरा काम ये करता है कि द सिक्वेंशियल मोड इन विच अ प्रोग्राम इज ऑपरेटिंग, उस सिक्वेंशियल मोड को वो डिस्टर्ब कर सकता है. ठीक है, सो द प्रोग्राम में नॉट बी से could you can disturb the sequential running of the program, and that is, let's say, when you are doing the go to sort of a statement जब आप use करते हैं. conditional statement में the standard sequential flow is there. जैसे ही आप conditional statement के block से बाहर निकलते हैं, immediately the next statement that is present that is executed. ठीक है, लेकिन कुछ ऐसे हैं जो कि आपके प्रोग्राम के फ्लो को डिस्टर्ब कर लेते हैं. उसकी सीक्वेंशियल जो द मैनर इन विच द प्रोग्राम एग्जीक्यूट व्हिच इज मोस्टली द सीक्वेंशियल फॉर्म दैट is actually disturbed. तो you have to be very careful when using those types of statements जो कि आपके सीक्वेंशियल फ्लो को डिस्टर्ब करते हैं. ठीक है, एंड आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि बाकियों में आपको केयरफुल नहीं होना चाहिए, बाकियों में भी आपको केयरफुल होना चाहिए. alternatives जब आप प्रोवाइड करते हैं, दिस इज व्हेन यू आर यूजिंग दीज स्टेटमेंट्स. इफ स्टेटमेंट्स होगी, दूसरी स्टेटमेंट्स होगी. And then there is another part in any programming language where you can actually do run a particular part of your program again and again. This is what you call repetition. Okay? This is just in a road network. This is just like around say a sort of क्या उसे कहते हैं, roundabout. ठीक है, so you can go around that many times, so you can repeat that. And I've already told you कि अगर इस तरह की आपने करना, this is what you call as looping, and of course you know what this looping is. There are standard 3 different ways in which you can do that. while loop करते हैं, do while करते हैं, और for loop करते हैं. for loop का भी इस्तेमाल करते हैं. Anyone? definite number of repetitions जब आपको पता हो, when you know कि कितनी repetitions आपने करनी है, then you will be doing. while loop और do while loop में भी distinct differences हैं. ठीक है, वो difference जो है वो क्या है? for example while loop में और do while loop में basic difference क्या होगा? do while runs once and then checks the condition, and अच्छा, do while runs at least once. ठीक है, okay, fine. और I hope you know कि जो condition है in case of a do while, the placement of that condition, where the placement of the condition is actually done. Right, do while is post conditional, while is pre-conditional. At the top of the loop, do while के अंदर या while के अंदर आपकी जो condition location है, that actually matters, वो उसके syntax के साथ आती है. ठीक है, अगर किसी वक्त आप उसका syntax भूल जाएं तो you can always like find out कि किस तरीके से वो करते हैं. So while के केस में अगर condition आपकी true है तो the body of the loop will be executed. fine. Condition check होगी, the body will be executed. ठीक है. In case of do while, the body will be executed and then the condition will be checked. Right? So that tells us कि आपकी जो do while है उसमें condition एंड चेक होती है, then एक दफ़ा आपकी लूप की बॉडी एग्जीक्यूट होती है. राइट. So you have to select among these loops कि कौन सा लूप आपके प्रोग्राम के लिए जो है वो बेहतर है, और वही आपने लूप जो है वो लगाना है अपने प्रोग्राम. फाइन जी. फॉर लूप का एक अपना सिंटेक्स है. यू हैव टू इनिशियलाइज अ वेरिएबल, अप्लाई अ कंडीशन ऑन दैट, इंक्रीमेंट दैट, एंड देन यू हैव द ब्लॉक फॉर द फॉर लूप. ठीक है. और फिर वो ब्लॉक एग्जीक्यूट होता है जो कि उसके अंदर उस फॉर लूप के अंदर फॉल करता है. राइट. अच्छा, there is one thing that you have to be very careful while you are designing these loops, and anyone can tell me what is that condition, what is that thing that you have to be very, very careful about? Either you can write in the chat box or you can actually open your mic. Okay. Yes, loop termination and infinite loops. So it's actually the infinite loops. You should be very, very careful about this. And if that happens, then that is the biggest sort of mistake that you can actually perform when you are doing a program. ठीक है. So you have to be very careful about that. ठीक है. तो वो आपने उस चीज़ को अपने जहन में ज़रूर आपने रखना है. And you can avoid that by looking at your condition very carefully. ठीक है. You should write the condition in a way which is very, very clear. ठीक है. It should be very, very readable. ठीक है. इस फॉर्म में आप कंडीशन ना डालेंगे जिससे जो कि एम्बिग्विटी क्रिएट कर दे while you are writing the program. अच्छा, इट्स नॉट रियली नेसेसरी कि आप अपना जो लूप है, जो रेपिटेशंस हैं, वो आप अपनी जो कंडीशनल स्टेटमेंट आपने लगाई हुई है उसकी ट्रूथ वैल्यू के ऊपर डिपेंड करें कि आप वो एग्जीक्यूट ब्लॉक करता है या नहीं करता. यू कैन एग्जिट अ लूप इवन इफ अ कंडीशन फॉर एग्जिटिंग द लूप इज नॉट फुलफिल्ड. ठीक है. एंड दैट इज डन थ्रू व्हाट जी, ब्रेक स्टेटमेंट है. एनीथिंग एल्स यू कैन यूज ब्रेक एंड यू कैन यूज कंटिन्यू स्टेटमेंट. ठीक है. यू कैन ऑल्सो यूज, जो कि पहले एक स्टूडेंट ने बताया था, यू कैन ऑल्सो यूज go to statement, right? So you can also use it. So these are few sort of ways in which you can actually break or you can leave the loop if you wish, depending upon certain conditions that might appear in your program, right? Okay. And then we have another sort of alternative which is available, and you'll have to find out कि ये alternative किसका है, loops का है या conditional statements का है या किसी और का है, and that is what you have, the switch statements. ठीक है. Switch statements के अंदर you define cases, और उन cases each case will have its specific block. So हर case का एक अपना block है. When a particular case is satisfied, in a way you can say that it's analogous to a condition. So if that condition or that case is satisfied, that means that the condition to run that block of that case is satisfied, then that specific block is actually a run. ठीक है. So I'll share a few examples also with you, जिसमें आप you can see that how this actually executes. लेकिन here is a question. The question is that when to use a switch sort of statements or switch block, and when to use other conditional statements. किन cases में आप switch use करेंगे और किस cases में other statements use करेंगे. Okay, right, Aisha. So this is something that should be clear in your mind कि आपने क्या use करना, ठीक है, किस तरह की conditional statements आपने use करना. So that's the question is that switch कब use करेंगे और इसके जो switch के alternatives हैं वो कब use करेंगे, ठीक है. क्या ऐसा हम कर सकते हैं कि हम switch ना use करें और कोई alternative use कर लें, या फिर ये है कि switch के बगैर जो है वो काम ही नहीं चल सकता. आपको इन हर केस में इस कंडीशन के अंदर आपने स्विच को यूज करना है. आयशा is saying कि इसमें primarily switch is a little more efficient than if when too many conditions are there तो फिर आप switch use करेंगे. Small number of cases then use switch. Right. These are all different say options that you have, but then you'll have to see, you'll have to find out कि क्या चीज़ आपके प्रोग्राम को ज़्यादा एफिशिएंट बना देती, ठीक है. So Aisha is right. Small number of cases अगर आपके पास हों तो आप उसमें switch use करेंगे. That's also like that's one of the options. I can't say कि आप ऐसा नहीं कर सकते, ठीक है. When there are too many conditions फिर आप switch use कर सकते, ठीक है. When there is a uniform condition, एक ही condition है जिसको आपने बार बार चेक करना है, तो उस केस में आप obviously switch को use करना आपके लिए ज़्यादा difficult होगा, ठीक है. For example, if you are looking at, let's say, salary of a group of people, तो आपने सिर्फ ये segregate करना है कि कितने अच्छे लोग हैं जिनकी salary 50,000 से ऊपर है. So in that case, the condition is very very clear. I mean, you just have to check the same condition again and again. लेकिन switch आपने switch block आप इस केस के अंदर उस वक्त यूज़ कर सकते हैं जब आपने मुख्तलिफ स्लैब्स के लिए टैक्स कैलकुलेट करना. फॉर एग्ज़ाम्पल जिनकी सैलरीज जो हैं वो आपके पास 20,000 या उससे कम है, फिर 40,000 या उससे कम है, या 60,000 या उससे कम है. आई मीन 62 उससे कम मतलब ये है कि से 20,000 से कम है, फिर 20,000 30 के दरमियान है, और फिर 30 से 40 के दरमियान है, और फिर 40 से 60 के दरमियान है और अबव. तो इस केस में यू विल हैव टू लुक एट वेरियस ऑप्शंस एंड देन डिसाइड कि आपने स्विच यूज़ करना है या कुछ और यूज़ करना है, राइट. इसमें आप सिंपल कोई एक कंडीशन चेक नहीं कर रहे. देयर आर मल्टीपल थिंग्स दैट यू आर चेकिंग एंड देन बेस्ड ऑन दैट योर पाथ ऑफ योर प्रोग्राम एक्चुअली ऑल्टर्स. अच्छा, right. So there are multiple ways. So the end point that I want to emphasize, there are multiple ways you can solve a particular problem, right? You can use different types of loops. Let's say you can use different types of conditional statements in your program. You can use different types of declarations, different ways in which you can manipulate your variables and find out. But the important thing here is what makes your program an efficient program, because you have to keep that thing in mind. और इस चीज़ को ज़हन में रखते हुए you'll have to discuss, you'll have to find out कि क्या चीज़ आपने यूज़ करनी, right. So what I'll do now is that I'll upload the session for today along with the 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 handouts which are handwritten and the slides जो कि मैंने already आपको कर दिया. So the discussion that we are having is a very sort of preliminary sort of discussion. From next time there will be slides that I'll be sharing. There will be some real time sort of camera enabled sort of discussion that we'll be having. उसके ऊपर interactive, depending upon the topic किस तरह का है. With all the support that we have, I think you will be able to get hold of these concepts very quickly, especially the ones that you haven't revised over time. So when we'll have Monday's lab. So Monday's lab का जो time slot है वो 9 से 11:50 तक का है. ठीक है, it's in the same slot. ठीक है, Zoha. So I'll basically okay. So this week, the semester actually started on 15th. So Monday, 14th. So this was anyway out of the schedule. एक class जो Tuesday वाली class थी. अच्छा, Ajwa, I've answered this question earlier. जो labs हो रही हैं Monday को, जो Monday वाले दिन जो labs होंगी, they'll basically be of two types. Practice labs हैं और other, well, I shouldn't be using the word evaluated. Well, all the labs will be evaluated, but there will be few labs जिनकी weightage थोड़ी सी ज़्यादा होगी, and the others उनकी weightage relatively कम होगी. But hopefully all the labs will be included in your grades, और उसके बाद we can drop a few from low weightage labs. ठीक है, उनको हम कुछ को हम उसमें ड्रॉप कर देंगे, और मे बी हाई वेटेज लैब्स जो हैं उनका भी नंबर अगर रीजनेबल, एंड ऑफ कोर्स देयर विल बी अ रीजनेबल नंबर देयर, उसमें से भी हम कुछ ड्रॉप करेंगे. तो वी विल बी ड्रॉपिंग फ्यू लैब्स. ठीक है, सो द आंसर टू योर क्वेश्चन इज दैट they'll all be graded, but the level of weightage will be different. If we can't complete in time, will it be solved? I'm very hopeful that you will be able to complete that in time. ठीक है, उसका सबमिशन टाइम आपको within that slot होगा. जितना आप क्विकली स्टार्ट करेंगे, जितना अर्ली आप, लेट्स से टॉपिक्स आपको पहले से हम कुछ बता दिए होंगे, यू शुड कम प्रिपेयर्ड. आपको कोई प्रॉब्लम आती है, यू कैन कनेक्ट टू द जूम लिंक एंड रिजॉल्व दैट. कोशिश ये करेंगे आप अपने जो है जूम कनेक्शन आप अपना ऑन रखें जब आप ये कर रहे हैं, ताकि आपको कोई क्वेरी अगर हो तो आप वो प्रॉब्लम हम सॉल्व कर सकें. अच्छा, एक जो क्वेश्चन था जी, लॉन्ग टाइम के ऊपर हमने टीएस ने और हमने काफ़ी डिस्कशन की है. महा गजनफर इज़ आल्सो वन ऑफ आवर टीम्स एंड वी हैव जस्ट फॉरगॉट हर earlier. So we had a discussion on that, and we said that it would be not fair for all the students actually, कि अगर हम टाइम को बढ़ा देते हैं, उसमें प्रॉब्लम ये आएगी कि कुछ स्टूडेंट्स का, लेट्स से कि हम 5 घंटे कर देते हैं कि ये आप 5 घंटे के अंदर जमा करवा दें, उसमें प्रॉब्लम ये आएगी कुछ स्टूडेंट्स की हो सकता है इमीडिएटली इस क्लास के बाद भी कोई क्लास हो. ठीक है ना, तो वो तो फिर ये असाइनमेंट नहीं कर सकेंगे ना, वो अपनी क्लास अटेंड करेंगे या असाइनमेंट. कुछ ऐसे होंगे जिनकी क्लास नहीं होगी, राइट. So those who will be actually attending another class, उनके साथ unfair होगा. So that's why we'll try to keep it short, ताकि आप उसी time slot में कर सकें. Okay. So how can we have a graded lab without studying anything on Monday? अच्छा, the thing is कि this would be based on some of the basic stuff, और उसका जो handout है that will be self-explanatory. The manual will contain some solved problems of related to the topics that we'll be covering, right? And then there will be one or two questions or कुछ इस तरह के questions होंगे which based on that earlier solution जो आपको provide किया गया होगा उसकी base के ऊपर you can actually solve it. We'll manage that inshallah. ठीक है. And as I told you कि उसमें से हम कुछ labs को drop भी करेंगे. हो सकता है Monday वाली जो lab हम कर रहे हों उसमें हम देखेंगे कि क्या चीज़ हमने उसमें रखनी है, किस तरीके से उसको करना है. अगर हम जो भी इन्वायरमेंट चूज़ कर रहे हैं, अगर उसकी इंट्रोडक्शन हम कर रहे हैं, तो देन there will be something for submission. So agar if there is something for submission, then of course it will be graded. So we'll let you know, inshallah, by tomorrow or by Saturday. Right? Right. So if are there any other questions? If not, then I think we should end today's session. And just pass around this word that I'll also email then, but in your friend circle, that this recording will be available and all the students should actually go through the recorded part. So I'll provide the all the necessary stuff that comes along with today's session. And hopefully by Tuesday next, जब हमारी next class होती है, the problem that we have faced today, we'll not be facing that problem, inshallah. Right? अच्छा जी, Erais Hassan, if I correctly pronounce your name, the TA would check our work, and if there were some mistakes, then we would correct them. How will it be done? Okay, I mean you will be online. I mean हम online slot आपके लिए book रखेंगे. If you want the help of the TA, I mean you should prefer to be online. ठीक है, और आप उनसे डिस्कशन कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, फिजिकल लैब के अंदर ये करना आसान है, जो आपने बताया कि मिस्टेक्स को चेक करते हैं और इस तरह से करते हैं. इसमें थोड़ा सा चैलेंजिंग है ऑनलाइन के अंदर. यू कैन कंसिडर दीज लैब्स टू बी मिनी असाइनमेंट्स. ठीक है, दे आर प्राइमरीली असाइनमेंट्स, लेकिन इसमें टाइम स्लॉट जो है ना वो कम. नॉर्मल असाइनमेंट्स के अंदर टाइम स्लॉट ज़्यादा होता है. ठीक है, तो अगर कोई प्रॉब्लम आपको आ रही है तो आप उसी दौरान, सेशन के दौरान जो है वो टीएस अवेलेबल होंगे, आप उनसे क्वेरी कर सकते हैं, उनसे पूछ सकते हैं. जिस तरह की भी हेल्प आपको देनी होगी वो दे प्रोवाइड दैट हेल्प. ठीक है, चेक करना उस तरीके से, दैट्स ऑल्सो अ पॉसिबिलिटी. अगर आपने जो भी किया आप उनसे शेयर कर लें और वो आप उसके ऊपर अपनी फीडबैक दे दें. ठीक है, तो इसी तरीके से हो सकता है. So as I told you, the help will be available. If you want to take that help, that session will be on. ठीक है, so you should make sure कि आप उस सेशन में हों और आप उस सेशन में रहें while you are doing the lab, ताकि कोई प्रॉब्लम हो आप उनसे डिस्कस कर सकें. Right? Okay, thank you very much for today, and inshallah we'll meet next week with a more interactive pattern. Acha. There is another difficulty level of the lab, and the difficulty level of the lab would gradually increase over time. ठीक है, हम शुरू में ही उसको बहुत ज़्यादा difficulty लगी, it would gradually increase over time, right? And that's obviously the way this should happen. ठीक है जी. लेकिन जो भी होगा उसके साथ जो associated solve problems होंगी, if you are able to understand those problems and if you are able to communicate well with your TS, you shouldn't be in problem at all. Sarath. Okay ji. If there isn't anything else, we should I'll be ending the session now. If there are any queries, you can write down to me at my email address, awais@lums.edu.ek. Okay, Zoha, I've answered this earlier, लेकिन we'll let you know in 1 or 2 days कि क्या होगा. ठीक है, और किस तरीके से हम उसको करेंगे. जो भी आपके लिए आसानी होगी, we'll be doing that. ठीक है, we'll not like to complicate things. ठीक है, hopefully environment हम वही यूज़ कर रहे होंगे जिससे आप शायद familiar हो पहले से. ठीक है, if not, then you will be provided complete help. ठीक है जी. Okay जी, thank you very much. Okay sir, when deciding the okay जी, Tambo, we'll make sure that this happens. Right. Okay जी, खुदा हाफिज़.